Good morning, everyone, to the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee meeting. It is Friday the 2nd at 8 o'clock. Thank you for coming. And I just wanted to open the meeting, and someone had asked last time about, I just wanted to review, and I don't want to treat you like children, but like if you want to speak, raise your hand. Let's try not to talk over each other. Stay on the topic. I know when I first came, not as chair, but as just a committee member, it was, things were a little bumpy. But I think for the most part, it's smooth, but just as a reminder, because a few times when people get excited, and it's hard to hear when people are like jumping over each other. So thank you. And Michael Buffoni can't come today. He sent an email, I don't know if you got it, that data collection equipment was sent out for its annual tune-up prior to the testing season, and he wished everyone a happy holiday. So I think that was it. So minutes, we had, Charlie, do you wanna, the minute topic, we had 3 sets that I think needed to be organized. I think they're all done, and I think we just have to approve them, but I'd like to know if we're clear on that.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, good. So, yeah, that's all my fault. I took the minutes, and then what I didn't do some of the time was, I think a lot of the time was say that the previous minutes had been approved, because by the time I figured I was doing it, whatever. So that's a very important thing for minutes, is to state that they're approved. And also, to put the date that we're talking about when we say the minutes were approved. So if I just said, for example, the minutes were approved, that of the previous meeting, that doesn't suffice. It should be the minutes of the whatever date it was were approved. Okay, so in order to be official about this, it ought to be done over. Now, Roxanne has taken a look at this, and she can weigh in a little bit. But basically, I'll make sure that I do that from now on when I take the minutes, and we'll that'll get squared. But we're going to have to do the catch up with making sure that we get the right ones approved, and that we don't approve any of them twice. So it's a little bit of a nuisance, and I apologize to everybody. And it's, at the same time, this, just as long as we brought it up, it's important that those same issues are covered with the agenda. And I think this last agenda was very good, but everything has to have dates associated with it. Every kind of item has to have a date with it. So, we'll be doing that as we go along forward. And I apologize for not doing all that. It's going to be a little bit of an inconvenience, but we'll get it right back on track. So anyway, Roxanne, you want to weigh in on that? I think you're here.
Yeah, I sent out yesterday, I went through them, and I went through the CTSB videos looking for what was had been approved, that I could verify they were really approved. So I sent in 3 sets of minutes to be posted yesterday to Terry and Teresa. And then yesterday I sent to all of you, it was September 2nd, 2020, 12/4/2020, and 2/5/2021, I believe. And I think the 2/5 is the one that you referred to as the Cortman presentation. I think that's that one. But anyway, I mean, even if it's repetitive, if we get it on record that we have a motion to approve each one of these sets of minutes, or all 3 for these dates, then I can just make sure that Teresa and Terry get them.
Okay. Charlie, does that sound right?
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I think that all things considered, all of us should have had the opportunity actually to take a look at them and make sure that they seem to be good, and put it into that perspective before we go ahead and approve it. So, and I don't think that we have to approve them. Do we have to approve them today, Roxanne? Is there any issue on that?
No, we don't have to do them today if everybody had a chance to go through them. I suspect that we've probably all read these at some point, but yeah, everybody take time to just look them over, make sure that they look okay. And obviously after watching 16 videos, I was getting a little bleary eyed, so I could have missed something, where they were approved and I just didn't skip to the right place. I was assuming that we probably covered it either at the beginning or the end of the meetings, you know, and I skipped through most of these, like the presentation, obviously I could like fast forward through, but a lot of them, it was just sitting and listening, and I could have missed something for sure.
Jamie, do you think you might want to ask everybody to see if they think it's an appropriate time to approve them now, or they want to have more time on it, or whatever?
Sure. So, and I usually try to do this right in the beginning, so it's easier just to get this business out of the way. So, you know, that Roxanne, I'm sorry you went through all the videos, but Jim, did you have a question? You were waving.
Yeah, just a point of order for someone who does agendas all the time for my boards. What I would do is I would recommend to not approve them today, but what I would do is the next agenda, the first item should be review and approve, and then put the dates of all those minutes. So you have 3 sets of minutes plus today's that should go on the next agenda for official review and approval, with a motion and a second, and then all in favor. So it's captured in the following minutes. The other piece too is, you know, if you decide to do the draft and send it out to the committee, just make sure that if people have questions or comments or edits on the minutes, that they don't hit reply all. That's a bad practice to get under, because that would be a violation of open meeting. They should just, so if Dr. Kenny has a question or an edit, he should email you just directly, or whoever's doing the minutes. That way there, you have an easy flow. But what you do is every meeting, you'll have minutes from the previous to review and approve, but always put the dates on that. But I would just recommend that you don't approve them today unless the agenda is specific on those dates that you're going to review and approve those minutes, and just carry it over to the next meeting. The next meeting should clean it all up for you, and then just keep going after that.
Okay. Thank you, Jim, for that suggestion. And I think what's also been confusing is because we've been taking turns doing the minutes, and then not that that's a bad practice, but just that we don't have one point person as the minute taker. So, and for today, who wanted to take minutes this morning?
Well, and I volunteered, I offered to Charlie that I would take the minutes for today's meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Roxanne. Charlie didn't tell me, but that's okay. Thank you. Yes, Michael.
Roxanne, just a question. Roxanne, did you say you sent the minutes to the group, the previous minutes to everybody?
Yes. Did you?
I
not
didn't
get
get anything from you,
Okay.
so you just may want to take a look at that.
Yep,
Alright.
I'll take a look and make
Okay.
sure I send it directly to you.
Thank you.
So, Jamie,
Charlie?
I'd like to make a motion that Roxanne suggests which dates are relevant, but that we take Jim's suggestion and we make a motion that to put on the agenda for the next meeting those dates of minutes that we will approve at the beginning of that meeting. So we have specific dates. And Roxanne, you want to give us those dates, or how should we handle it?
Yeah, I've got the 3 dates that I sent out, and I think one of these overlaps with today's agenda, but the agenda didn't have the date. And I think the way it was worded on the agenda is like the presentation or Cortman's presentation. And I believe that's 2/5, which is one of the ones I did send out. The other 2 that I sent out are a lot older, 12/4/20 and 9/2/20. And then I talked to Michael, Nathan, because we had some really early ones that we didn't have posted. And Michael was going to get back to me if he had some of those. And then I can search and see, did we actually approve these or not? And again, we'll just add them to the next agenda.
So I'd like to amend my motion then to say that I'd like to make a motion that at the next meeting, for the next meeting's agenda, we put on the approval of the minutes from 2/5/21, 12/4/20, and 9/2/20.
And who would like to second that?
So moved.
Thank you, John. John seconded, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Michael?
Just to finish this up, Roxanne, you had asked me for July 1st, and I sent you those minutes.
Oh, really? Okay.
So at first I couldn't find them, but 5 minutes later I found them and sent it to you. So you
Okay,
should have it.
and I just sent you what I thought I sent
Okay,
to everybody
great.
yesterday.
Let's
so
keep
you should
going.
have it all. Okay.
Okay, great.
Shall I amend it further to add on 7/1/20 as an additional minutes that we'll approve? Okay,
Yes.
I
Are
am
they-
in the motion. 7/1/20 will be an additional minutes that we'll approve at that, that we'll have listed on the agenda and approve at the next meeting.
And second to that amendment? Thank you, John. And all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay, thanks. Great. And the one I said compiled was the one that Charlie had wanted. I believe this is the one Charlie had wanted us all, if we had any contributions to give to him. And that's how so people would jog people's memory. So it was not a typo, just as a clarification. All right. Jim, would you like to share anything that might be relevant to
Sure.
the committee?
Yeah, for those that don't know me, Jim Willis, I'm the executive director for the Tri-Town Health District that covers Lee, Lennox, and Stockbridge Boards of Health. Nothing really prevailing. I know that we've been having a lot of conversations, well, the board has, with respect to the current mosquito control program. And we recognized some challenges a couple months ago with PFAS being found in some of their spraying. And I know the Stockbridge Board of Health sent some type of request to the select board for town meeting. I'm sure Dr. Kenny can allude to that. Another thing to think about, and I know the select board's also working on possible short-term rental bylaws. And I think we've all been working together on that. And the Board of Health and I have provided feedback with respect to that draft, and hopefully something can happen at town meeting. And I think it's really relevant because if we look around us, Berkshire County has become a significant destination, during the pandemic. And I think as we lead out, the market right now is booming in Berkshire County. Home sales are significantly up and whatnot. And I think that plays a role with short-term rentals because I'm seeing a lot of properties being sold. I mean, in the town of Lennox alone, pretty much every B&B in has sold in the last 6 months. And so people are investing. And so I think a short-term rental bylaw will be really relevant to make sure we get a handle on usage, especially for short-term. And with respect to septic as well, because we still have a small chunk in Stockbridge that are still served by on-site septic systems. And I know the Board of Health and I have been talking briefly over the last year or so about leaving an option on the table for the Board of Health to possibly look at a local regulation for at least better management of folks' on-site septic system. And what I mean by that is in some other towns, like the town of Monterey, for example, around Lake Garfield, they have a town bylaw, but you could also do a Board of Health regulation that any septic system sited within 400 feet of Lake Garfield had to be a pre-treatment system. Now, they don't retroactively go back, but if you sell the house and the system fails, you have to comply. And that creates a better environmental solution around the perimeter of the bowl. A second piece of that is we know just by what we do at the health department that a lot of seasonal homeowners don't really take care of their septic systems, i.e. pumping, cleaning their filters and stuff. But, as we move forward as a group with a lake management plan, I encourage this group as well as the Stockbridge Board of Health to keep that option on the table to explore further down the road. Not that we want to create challenges for current homeowners, but how can we improve the water quality? Because I still think we have some really old septic systems, especially the Lake Drive area, kind of that perimeter, that are contributing to the bowl issues. What level they're contributing, it's unknown, but it's something to really think about moving forward. And I think that's basically all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Jim?
No, just a comment. We did
John
yesterday.
did. Roxanne, John had raised his hand.
Sorry.
Go ahead, John.
You may be muted, John.
You're muted. John, you're muted. John?
Is that
There you go.
better?
Yes, yes.
Hi, John Loidice. A question for Jim. I was wondering if we have any ongoing process in which we could check these septic systems along the lake shores. I mean, I don't know if there's any way that we could enforce that. Does anybody know the answer to it?
I have the answer. So the state regulation that governs individual septic system is 310 CMR 15, which we call Title V. There is no systematic ongoing requirement for us to do inspections on septic systems as a town, unless it's an innovative alternative system. For example, we have a few on the bowl where it's a specialized septic system. It's like a mini wastewater treatment plant that processes the sewage before it gets sent to the septic field. Those by statute require a maintenance contract that's inspected routinely. So that is covered. But these older conventional systems that have been around for a long time, there is no legal mechanism right now for us to monitor that unless it's a property sale, unless you're doing an expansion that would trigger a Title V inspection. And then depending on the outcome of that, we would have to upgrade those systems to meet code. And there's not many communities in Massachusetts that have a systematic town-wide septic inspection program. That would take a lot of capital to do, and it would be a very heavy lift. But if you could figure out a local policy or regulation that, for example, you're required to pump your septic system every 3 years, no matter what, submit the records. That's a way of making sure people are maintaining their own systems. But to actually go out there and inspect all these places, no, there's no mechanism for that right now.
Thank you.
Roxanne, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to address, we had a special meeting yesterday in which we had one agenda item, and that was the short-term rental bylaw. So the select board has now approved that and referred it over to the planning board because it deals with zoning usage. And there will be a public hearing about that. But just to make a mention, we do have verbiage in there based on the input from Jim about septics and what is required when they come in and they register their short-term rental. And we also, there is a piece in there about professionally managed properties, which by definition under Mass General Law is, 2 or more properties and is professionally managed. So there are some limitations that we put in there, but that will be presented by the planning board in a public hearing. So everybody will, we don't need to go over it right now, but there are some provisions in there. And obviously we followed the advice of Tri-Town Health.
Thank you, Roxanne. Anyone else? I just had a question that piggybacks John's about, I know there was a question about the new property proposed on Lake Drive and about their septic, because it's an old one, but they're going to add one on top if that had sort of been ironed out. But I don't want to get into too many details because this isn't probably the appropriate meeting.
Is that a question for me, Jamie? Or
Yes, Jim.
I'm not sure what property it is. We deal with hundreds of them every day. So why
On
don't
Lake
you
Drive.
Yeah, but I have
Okay.
tons of projects going on Lake Drive. I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring
Okay.
to, but just shoot me an email and I can check the files, see if we have any plans on that we approved on that.
Okay. All right. Who's next? Charlie, Kenny, do you want to share anything today?
Yeah, actually, what I'd like to do, I really appreciate Jim's remarks about the possibility of regulations that the Board of Health might make with respect to these short-term rentals and things like that. I think at this point, it's probably a little early because we want to see how the town's own, the select board, the town's own process comes to fruition first, I think. But certainly everybody else can weigh in on that idea. But at some point, then I think we could revisit this idea, and with the idea potentially of having this committee put forth some suggestions that I could bring before the Board of Health and for potentially new regulations in this regard, if we think at that point that's would be worthwhile. So I just like to, say that I think these points are probably, we ought to wait before I ask this of the committee until after the town has decided with what they're doing, and then we could look at that and as a committee see if we want to make suggestions to the Board of Health with respect to future regulations. And I don't have anything else to report right now. COVID is still here, but we're returning to normalcy. And I think that as Jim brought up, and I'm sure we're all aware, we're going to have a huge number of people coming here compared to whatever we didn't have before. I think we're going to rebound, and we're going to see we're going to be dealing with totally different situations.
Okay. Michael, Nathan, did you have a question for
Just
Charlie?
as a small, I think a lot of people that are not on our committee are here to listen in on the hope of a septic system, of a town sewer system coming around Lake Drive. Jim, what you're bringing up is so important because Lake Drive is really one of the last areas of concentrated homes that does not have a town sewer system. So Mike not being here today, we were hoping that he would give us an update, but hopefully he'll give us that update at the next meeting. So everyone who came for this update, does anyone else have that information from Mike, or am I assuming?
No, he just sent me an email around 7:15 this morning, so I didn't realize he wasn't coming.
Yeah, no problem. But it is such an important thing, Jim, what you said, and I would love to see or recommend that around the lake, perhaps there should be some kind of added ruling about taking care of your septic systems once every 3 years, something that an official like you, Jim, would go in and check, because it really isn't a normal area of habitat living by the lake and what a septic does. A home septic.
In my last piece of that, and I'll yield the floor, is the soil conditions in a large percent of Lake Drive are bad. There's ledge issues, there's silty clay conditions, the lots are small. We have major setback issues from property to property because they have to have their own well and whatnot. And I would love to see a sewer system down there. And again, as Dr. Kenny mentioned, I'm not suggesting we do this early, but we should leave it on the table and put it in the toolbox for future use and maybe looking at it. It's something the Board of Health and Tri-Town's philosophy is not just to throw regulations out there for the sake of throwing regulations out there. We do that as response to a public health issue, but it's something that I've been wanting to see for a long time. They did that Interlake extension and Mackinac several years ago, and it would just make the water quality so much better in that area. There's so many septic issues down there that we see. Every time we get a septic Title V, most of them don't even pass, and they're spending 60, 70, 80 grand for another on-site system, and it's just these huge mounted system. It depreciates the property values, and a sewer system will actually improve, not only environmental quality, but it actually increases the home values with a sewer system.
Thank you. John, you had a question, and then Jill, and then Beth.
Thank you. I was going to just piggyback on what was being said about increasing the sewer flow. I mean, we have capacity to handle the area that we're talking about, Lake Drive, and I think that it wouldn't be a difficult problem to get a discussion going to get people who would want to be hooked up. I think that the logistics are to be worked out, but I think we have the capacity to handle the additional homes that we're talking about. So if Mike was here, he could probably speak to it better than I can. But I think it's something that needs to be discussed further. Being the newest member of the Sewer Water Commission, that was one of my first concerns, is why we haven't gotten circumferentially around the pond. I think we should have. And I think we should continue to go in that direction.
Thank you, John. And Jill, you've had your hand up. Would you like to speak? Then Beth may speak.
Yes, thank you. I actually am a resident of the Lake Drive area, and my question is, hearing from the professionals that this would actually be beneficial to the town as well as, speaking as an owner, beneficial to us, how do we proceed to make sure that this gets heard and gets considered? It sounds like everybody's saying this sounds like a good idea, but is there a process, and how do we help move that along?
Jim or Charlie, do you want to take that?
With respect to sewer expansion, I mean, I would put that into the plate with the Sewer and Water Commission, the Select Board. That's not really a Board of Health issue. Once a property's on sewer, it's out of our hands. We handle the on-site septics, but I would, the Board of Health, we can put that on the agenda to endorse and support, but it's a bigger question to have, because that's going to take a lot of money to do a sewer expansion, and you got to do the cost benefit, rationale on hookups and annual fees and stuff. But that's really a Sewer Water Commission and other boards jurisdiction to kind of sort out. But, we can support however that process moves forward. And I'm not really sure where to start, but I think Mike and the Sewer Water Commission would be a good place to start.
Beth, you had your hand. You were next.
So I was at a select board meeting last week where I brought this up because I was concerned that we wouldn't get in possibly an engineering study into the operating budget for the fiscal next year. And I believe, Roxanne, that Mike Canales said that he would contact Mike Buffoni at the water sewer, and we didn't need to have a special allocation made for an engineering study, that there was money in the budget currently to do an engineering study. And I think that was the next step in terms of moving this project forward, to see if it's feasible and what that means. So it's a crossover of meetings between the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship and the Select Board, but that's what happened at that meeting.
Thank you, Beth. And Charlie, you were next.
Yeah, we've discussed this a little bit at the Board of Health, and Jim is absolutely right. This is not our jurisdiction per se, although analysis of the septic systems around the lake, which is a Tri-Town Board of Health analysis, is potentially a foundation point for the need for extending the sewer. And, so that's part of it. I would just say one of the other aspects of the sewer is not just simply the capacity for the Lake Drive residents, that if you extend the sewer, it's probably a good idea to consider all of the people around the lake. Kripalu has a huge septic system. I don't know where they would go with this. The BCD and there are other homes on the other side of 183 that are also potentially for this, so that the capacity idea may not just simply be a capacity evaluation for the Lake Drive people. And of course, when you get into allocation of taxpayer funds, for things everybody wants to have their share of the pie. So we would want to keep that in mind. But I do think the Board of Health and Tri-Town would have that initial analysis contribution that I think we should be eventually prepared to make and be in position to do that, so we can support the idea. Don't you think so, Jim?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have a lot of septic files. One of the things we could do is, as we move down this road, is try to identify who's not on municipal sewer, do some type of survey and send it out, to see if there's a willingness. Do you know the age of your system? How old is it? What type? And that could be a good set of metrics we can explore. Something that's always come up in the past when we've done sewer expansions, for example, if we got a property that just put in $70,000 septic system and now they're going to be connecting to sewer, there's always that option to look at. If you have an up-to-date passing system, leave that option on the table. But I think a survey to try to get an analysis on, the ability of people that are interested in connecting. And you're right about Kripalu, for Paulo's got a very large system that DEP permits, the State Department of Environmental Protection. They actually permit and oversee their septic system. It's over 10,000 gallons per day. But there are a lot of properties along 183 that are on septic as well. And, you know, obviously Lake Drive is an issue with the perimeter of the water lake quality, but let's not pigeonhole ourselves into one specific area. It should be more of a broader approach to look at, because, you know, the watershed still influences the movement to the bowl. You can be on 183 a mile away and you got ledge issues and you got a failing septic system. It's going to take some time, but it'll work its way down to the bowl. But definitely we can look at trying to collect data to see how that moves forward.
And Roxanne, you've been patient. You want to speak?
Yeah, as Beth said, that did come up 2 meetings ago, the select board meeting. So, you know, we're talking about a coordinated analytical effort between the Sewer and Water Commission, you know, obviously SBSC, Tri-Town Health, our Board of Health. And so this is obviously a complex issue and a lot of analysis is going to have to go into it. Ultimately, in terms of funding this does go to the voters, and it would be a warrant article going on an annual town meeting or a special town meeting. So I think we're talking some ways out, but I think the ball is rolling. I think this is starting to be discussed and certainly we'll pursue it.
And John, I think I saw you waving your hand a while back.
Well, I think what I was going to say was that we need to have a survey. We need to, as Jim says, we need to get a show of hands as to the number of people that would be interested in having this, so that we can then present it as a cost analysis, you know, from the point of view of expansion. So yeah, I favor having a survey of the people who would be interested in having hooked up.
Thank you. And Michael, I saw you waving your hand.
Yeah, just a heads up. Through Lake Drive, we have, of course, the gas companies piping. So just a heads up, if whoever discusses it with an engineer's report, they'll probably come across it themselves. But they're going to have to deal with probably with the Tennessee Gas Company because of rights that they have that have made it very hard for us at Lake Drive to do road repairs or anything that we wish to do without their permission, because they had certain right of areas left and right of their pipes. So just as a heads up. So basically, but I think, John, to your point, there might be a difference between people who are interested and people who will actually do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to just as also, you know, we really should get, maybe Lake Drive will bring it up at a Lake Drive meeting, which we'll have this summer, about people who will actually say they will do it. And because that's really the key. It's a very expensive process.
Sure.
To hook up.
I'm glad, because I remember bringing.
One last thing. Oh, I apologize, Jamie, for interrupting you. One last thing. The having a septic system still, I believe, Charlie, you can correct me, still the nutrients that we don't want to see in the lake still go into the lake, even if you have the most up-to-date septic system.
Well, I think they could. I mean, that's they don't have to, but you know, we have the two vulnerabilities here. You know, naturally, when Tri-Town tests the water in the lake, they're looking for E. coli. You know, they're not looking for phosphate or nitrate. And we don't do surveys. Correct me, Jim, if I'm wrong. We don't do surveys of the leaking potentially of soluble ions like nitrates and et cetera into the water. That's not a standard testing thing, and that certainly could be going on, especially when you have large systems. But the other part of it is, of course, that and the ledge allows for that water to travel along it and get to the bowl easier, perhaps. But we also have underneath the what we would call the superficial watershed, this dolomite calcitic marble. And this is what makes the bowl hard. This is what's called the Stockbridge Formation. It's the quarries, basically for the quarries in Lee, West Stockbridge and whatever. And this is basically a kind of limestone, and it's soluble. And over the years, water can form conduits through it that will allow for a much more rapid transfer of water and nutrients from places at a distance that you ordinarily wouldn't think would go that fast into the lake potentially. And also even from places that wouldn't be identifiable ordinarily as being in the watershed proper. In other words, you can be on the downhills, you could be on the downhill side of a slope, and it looks like the water's going to go down into another watershed. But if the channel in the marble is going underground and goes the other way, it may end up in the bowl. So we don't have a hydrogeological study done yet that shows us that particular vulnerability in a way that we can make any sense of it. And I think that's going to be another aspect of the infrastructural analysis that needs to be in place before we can intelligently protect the bowl with a sewer system. That's what I think.
Right. Roxanne, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just one comment. It's too bad that Mike Buffoni isn't here because he's the true expert on all this. But it does seem to me that when we did the expansion on the eastern side of the bowl, that there were some regulations put into place in terms of if we run a sewer, obviously we do the analysis, but it isn't a matter necessarily. I believe that people can be required to hook into the sewer within X number of years. And I think that's how it was on the eastern side, but we can probably get filled in by Mike Buffoni in the next meeting. So that's another thing to take into consideration and be part of this analysis is that, you know, how do you set up those kinds of regulations?
Great, thank you. John, would you like to share?
Well, following up with Roxanne, I don't know how we would initiate forcing someone to hook up. I mean, do we have somebody who'll say your system has failed and you now have to hook up into the sewer? You know, that's one aspect. The other aspect is, would you like to hook up into the sewer? So those are two very different scenarios. And I think we need to understand that a little bit better, at least I do, as to, you know, how to manage this whole thing. I agree. I think Mike Buffoni would probably be able to help us with the logistics of how you would entice someone to hook up.
Right. And Gary, would you like to share this morning on anything pertinent to the, not the sewer, but to our committee? I can't hear you.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. The boat ramp zebra mussel committee, the only trouble we ever have is money. We've got money now. The town has given us a grant each year of, I guess it's 16,000. And with the state's 6, we should have enough to open up. We're planning to have a full season. We're going to open up on the Memorial Day weekend or the Friday before. Other than that, it's a little too early. We just had ice out on the lake, and I'm looking forward to putting my boat in the water.
Right. Any questions for Gary or the zebra mussels or docks or anything that he would know about? Okay. Let's see. Michael Nathan, do you want to share anything? Can't hear you. Can't hear you, Michael. Okay, is that a no?
You're muted, Michael.
We can't hear you, Michael.
Okay. I would like to, not at this meeting, but you had sent out, Jamie, an email asking for people to put what they'd like to see on the agenda. And
Yes.
I had put that I would like to see sort of a formality of voting and discussions and maybe terms of a chair or terms of us on it, something that gives some kind of a parameter to this committee and what we vote on, what we don't, or what we discuss. And I didn't see that on the agenda for this. So I'd like to have that on the agenda for next time if possible.
All right.
I think it's pretty important that if we're a advisory group, that we vote on whatever it is that we were discussing if we want to advise the town. And the only vote that we've taken that I can remember is a vote of maybe 6 months ago of whether or not to go before the select board to have a lake management plan put into place or find somebody, and that was turned down. But since then, we really had not had any votes or discussions or on which way we'd like to advise the town to go. I'd also like to put on the agenda a discussion of probably of the restoration project. We were supposed to have Greg today and he couldn't make it. I just want to remind, this is not a Stockbridge Bowl Association project per se. We're partners, SBA is partners in that we've agreed to work with the town and raise money, which we've raised quite a bit of. But I suggest that Roxanne, you invite Greg to come to the next meeting. It's really more of a town project, which the SBA is fully behind. That's pretty much it. There's nothing really with the time. I thought the time that we took for this sewer and Jim's comments and John's comments were very beneficial to this meeting. I think it's a very important project for the town, and I thank them both for bringing it up. And that's it.
Thank you, Michael. And Roxanne, did you want to share today?
Yeah, and I think Michael makes a good point, and to have the dredging project on the next agenda, it would be great. I think it would be appropriate though for Jamie as the chairman of the SBSC to extend the invitation to Greg. Obviously, I'll probably be communicating with him anyway, but I think Jamie, it's appropriate for you as the chairperson to invite him to come, and if he has scheduling problems, we work around that. Let me see.
Michael had mentioned that he was going to take care of that, but I can do that gladly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Roxanne.
Okay, so let me see. Next thing up is, since we have entered into a contract with GZA, not only for monitoring, but also for the lake management plan, Mike Canales is going to be setting up a time in probably late April, early May for GZA and Dr. Cortman to come into a select board meeting and give a public presentation on the status of the bowl this year. And to discuss, the lake management plan, how that's going to play out. So they will be giving a presentation to the town prior to annual town meeting. The weed harvesting NOI is moving along. We do have a map. We are prepared to submit. And once we submit, we will be having that conversation with DEP and NHESP. Discuss the plans. I can do a share screen. I do have a map of the proposed harvest areas. Once we get into discussions with DEP and NHESP, we had indicated as a select board to Richard Seltzer, who requested that we do whole lake harvesting. So that will be asked, can we go any farther? But I can do a share screen if everyone is interested in seeing where we're talking about harvesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can
Steve just has to give you the rights. What,
Yeah.
Michael?
It's open. It's open.
Oh, Roxanne, would it be possible when you get these to send them over to us as a committee to look at? I've been working on the harvester, as Mike Buffoni would know, for 15 years now. I've driven the machine. I know exactly where all the areas are. So I think it's good to send this to us as a group, as an advisory group, just so that we see it before, and we may be able to give some bits of information that any one of us might know.
Oh, yeah, certainly I can send it out. At any rate, can everybody see the share screen with the map?
Yep.
I see
Okay.
a half the bowl.
Yeah, it's a map of Stockbridge Bowl and the north end. And what is in green here is the proposed control area for the herbicide application. So we have to avoid that area. The yellow areas, Kripalu Beach, Stockbridge Public Boat Launch, Mackinac Boat Club. Let me see if I can scroll around here. And then coming south, you got the Camp Mackinac. In front of the town beach, Mackinac Terrace access, and then down the channel. So this is what we're proposing to them. It only amounts to 6.0488 acres. And part of the discussion is going to be, number one, how much flexibility do we have? Because we don't know now where we're going to have problems. We may have a big problem in front of the town beach, for example, or elsewhere, and we need to know, how flexible is this plan? But this is the generalized idea that we will touch on these major areas, and we will be asking about whole lake harvesting. We are thinking they will probably decline that request, but certainly we still have 4 acres of flexibility in terms of how we do this, how we can expand the yellow areas on this map. So I can send this out to everyone, but this is where we're at, but it's still a work in progress because we do need to have a full discussion about it with DEP and NHESP.
Roxanne,
Yeah,
if you look down, having driven this, can you bring the map up a little bit so we can see the southern part by the island?
yep,
All right, to the route currently is to the east side, to the west, I'm sorry, to the west side of the island. There's, if I may recommend, if you have room, if you can get to what, 10 acres, is that the story that?
yeah,
Yeah, that it be a Y around the island, because that channel, that area southeast of the island is where most of the boats come through.
okay. Do you know,
And-
Michael, I have a question for you.
Sure,
You see where the bottom, the southernmost tip of the island is?
right,
Can the harvester go through there?
yes.
It can, okay.
Yeah,
Because
it
we
can, but
did talk
it
about
doesn't,
that.
right, but that's a very good point, Roxanne. Just that the area, I was just thinking the area to the east a little bit of where the yellow going towards the island, that area be part of the harvester. They need it on that shoreline.
Right, we have to avoid
I don't
these
have an
test,
arrow to,
yeah,
yeah,
the
no, you
test
have to stay
areas
away.
where we have
Yeah.
to stay away from.
you-
However, we did talk about this in terms of navigating the lake. Obviously, if you're coming around the lake and we're starting at the boat launch and you're coming in a clockwise direction, you do the town beach and then the access, obviously we can come over here to the eastern side of the island and then down through that little
You
opening.
You
and
don't
then
have,
up.
right, Roxanne, you don't have to harvest southeast of the island in between there, but the area, the shoreline just south of the island where it can be done should be part of this.
Right, but
that's
yeah,
all.
in traversing it, we were anticipating this, that in traversing this, there's probably gonna be a little swath in there.
And
that we
one
can-
last thing is that yellow line going from the proposed plot area that we have to avoid,
Yeah,
going east, usually we don't harvest, we don't cut going through there. We go through there and we start east of the island and south of the island, because that area basically is the boats usually don't come over so much. We're trying to keep an area where boats, they usually go southeast of the island through that area.
right.
But just as a point of reference, if you needed more area, if we could get more area towards that 10 acres, I would suggest more of along the shore, along that area south of the island. They need help there also.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so we have
Thank you.
4 acres of leeway here, and the other
great.
consideration is whether or not we do, as was done in the past, access down the channel to people's actual docks.
That's,
So that's-
yeah.
That's
Oh, well.
another piece of this that
Yeah.
might go in.
Thank you, Roxanne. Anything else you'd like to share?
Jamie,
One last question.
Wait, Charlie
One-
had a question.
I have 2 things to say. I'll yield to Michael. I'll just ask the question first. When you're talking about, quote, whole lake harvesting, Michael, in your experiences, are we talking about the deep portions of the lake?
No.
Can we clarify what we mean by whole lake harvesting?
I think, I can't speak for Richard because I don't know exactly what he meant, but I think he meant that the perimeter, there are areas around the perimeter of the lake.
Whole perimeter. Could we call it that if we're talking about the idea?
No, I don't even think, I'm going to tell you, I think you're probably talking 30%, 40% of the whole lake perimeter is needed for it. Gary would know as well as I do. There are certain areas that just don't need it. A lot of the areas on the east side don't need it as much, maybe, or whatever. But generally speaking, we're not doing, I can't believe that he's talking about doing the whole lake, deep and shoreline area of the lake. But I just want to ask Roxanne a question. What is the width?
Before we leave that point, Mike,
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
This issue of defining what we're talking about is very important because
Yeah.
if you recall, Dr. Cortman recommended to the Board of Health that we did formulate regulations, and anything more than 10% of the surface area of the lake in terms of proposed harvesting is going to have to come before the Board of Health.
Well, we're talking about, then you're talking about 30 acres
Yes,
of harvesting,
exactly,
38 acres of harvesting, which we're not going to come even near. I don't even think we do 38 acres of harvesting in general.
That's
when
my
we had
point.
it.
We want to emphasize that so that it's
Right.
not thought of as being whole lake harvesting.
Right. I don't think that it should be, we should scare the NHESP into talking about whole lake harvesting. I agree with you. We should really be more defining of what we mean in the areas. But Roxanne, what is the width you had proposed for the harvester? In other words, to get to the 10 acres, did you have a width like down the outlet or around the island or along
No,
the
I
shoreline?
don't have that information.
Okay, no problem. If we could get that, it's sort of like, that makes a big difference of whether you need to get to everybody's dock or not. The key
Well,
is,
If you look at the very center here in red, there's a little box. It says,
Yeah, I
in
can't read
addition
that.
to, it says, in addition to proposed harvest areas shown, private docks and swimming areas will receive 1 pass each with a harvester. So he has already built that in there verbally. It may not be reflected in the map because that's very discreet, but he's already put that in there. And yes, the select board understood when Richard made his request that he's not talking the entire lake.
yeah,
He's talking littoral zone. And so we do have some flexibility, and we're going to just have this discussion with DEP and NHESP and see, how much can we be flexible in this? Because we don't know until the weeds grow exactly where there's going to be an issue. So we want to have that flexibility. But I'm sure they're probably most likely going to limit us to 10 acres.
yeah. One last thing is, when you talk about 1 pass, there's probably 10 other things, but I'm only going to mention one. Is that 1 pass in the season or 1 pass when they come down the outlet? Because 1 pass in the season is ridiculous in a way.
No, it's 1 pass per, I think, harvesting event.
Okay, because, all right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Roxanne, did you have any more that you'd like to talk about today? You're muted.
I did want to mention also, there is a warrant article that is in draft form right now to propose that the SBSC becomes a true commission to go into the bylaws. There's going to be some more discussion about the verbiage and how it's worded, et cetera. But the way it is put together right now, we're talking about annual appointments to this group. Just so anybody knows that came up in Michael's comments, but it was on an annual basis, just like, you know, everything else is basically an annual appointment by the select board. This would be included in that, if it passes at town meeting.
Thank you. So we only have a few minutes to wrap up. At the Conservation Commission, there's been, you know, talk about like, and this goes with harvesting, like the docks and how far out and how close together. And as Michael had said, like, can the harvester get around these docks? Also, I just wanted to add that I had brought up a while back about, you know, getting the sewer around the lake. So I'm so glad that other people are want to do that also. And also the conservation, we had come up, there was a lot about, again, about sewer, because there was a new house project on Lake Drive. And also I found, this is sort of an aside, but I just thought it was curious, and I don't know if many of you, I had brought up just as a reminder about fertilizers on lawns, and then someone had sort of gotten irritated, like, well, of course we don't do that. And I thought, no, people do put fertilizer on their lawns around the lake. Like, I just, you know, I'm not gonna, I know it's about education and we can't, it's hard to do because we can't always control what people do and don't do. And then we don't want to get pointing the finger, but fertilizers do affect the lake and the watershed. So I think that's all I have. Does anyone have any additional things that they wanted to ask or share before we close up? Great. All right. I make a
One
motion.
second. Gary has something to say.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Gary.
hi, I just, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Conservation Commission contacted me in the fall and asked if I would help with a dock survey in the summer. I told them I would. I don't know if we can use any of this information, but just keep it in the back of your mind that there's going to be a complete survey done of the shore of the lake.
Oh, great. Anyone else have questions or comments? And I appreciate the townspeople. We had new people come to our meeting, so thank you. I make a motion to adjourn.
So move.
When's the next meeting?
Oh, so the next meeting, if you can attend, is April 16th at 8 a.m. via Zoom. And it'll be on the website, on the town website. But it's the same code numbers. Yes, Michael?
Jamie, please don't forget to put Gary Johnston on your list.
I
when you send
always
out
invite him and I reach out to him and he never responds. We've talked about this,
Oh, I
Michael.
didn't see him on the list. That's why, when you sent out the agenda. Okay, just a heads up.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for the reminder, of course. All right, anything else? Okay, so John seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Have a lovely holiday.
You too.